consecutive second places for him. Less than a quarter of a second short of the winner, though, in all of them. By the end of lap 7 in race 1 yesterday, he was 6th, 2 seconds behind the leader, and yet almost on pure pace alone, he was able to get back on his tail 6 laps later. Shirila's got plenty of pace.
Yeah, and I think there's a few other riders that have that pace as well. We saw Gunmaya make big progress during the course of the races. He set a few fastest laps to bridge a gap to close up on Shiril and Furusato at the front of the field. So keep an eye out for the number 5 as well. Obviously, you'd expect as the weekend progresses, everyone's going to get a little bit more competitive around this track. They're going to understand where they need to put their bikes to be able to race with the riders around them. We saw yesterday a lot of riders tripping over one another, especially down in towards turn 10. We saw a few crashes there.
Yes, as you say, Gunmie, who was forced into a situation of recovering, frankly, because he didn't have a good first lap at all. He was relegated down to 8th position early on, and although he did get back up into 2nd, it took him until lap 6, and he's not going to want to work that hard again in the opening laps here, not least because if it takes him 6 laps, that's half of the distance now that we've got a revised distance with only 12 laps at the second time of asking. Just saw Gunmie there, the Japanese youngster, a podium finisher yesterday, and that's the third time for him in 5 races. Enough to move him a clear 3rd position in the championship as a result, and just a little bit outpaced in the closing laps, but he's been one of the few riders this season to have had a genuine go at Taiyo Furusato, the championship leader, and the man who is the man to beat, as it were, over the course of this race.
Yeah, certainly the rider with the target on his back. You can see Carter Thompson here down in the pits as well, and Carter's had a pretty solid season. He's been top 5 in 4 of the races so far this year, 7th in the other race, and he finished 4th yesterday, so he's chasing his first ATC podium. He's going to start from the middle of the front row of the grid. This is a good opportunity for him.
Yes, Carter Thompson from the Australian capital of Canberra, who as a result of that 4th place in race 1 moved up to 4th in the championship standings, and as I said previously, the top 4 all still mathematical contenders, but Carter Thompson 66 points down with only 75 up for grabs, so that's in the realms of fantasy, to be perfectly honest. To get up into the top 3 in the series standings is certainly more achievable, but he'll almost certainly need to get onto the podium for the first time this campaign if he is to achieve that. This is his first full season, as it were, in the Asia Talent Cup. He did the opening 2 rounds of the opening round of last season as well, so put a couple of race starts under his belt then.
Yeah, and certainly for Carter, he's got a bit of luck on his side as well. 4th in the championship, the 2 riders behind him in the championship, Denish and Hamada, both out of action in today's running, so he's got the chance to consolidate that 4th position with another decent points paying finish. Well,
this almost looks like a pre-season photograph, doesn't it, with all the bikes lined up, getting the sponsors their advertising time, and the grandstands will enjoy seeing the bikes and riders lining up as well.
Yeah, and everyone does look forward to the Asia Talent Cup races. There's always exciting action on track in the Talent Cups because all these bikes, a standard Honda 250 Moto 3 style bike, are identical. It really is just down to the rider to make the difference. Obviously, the Asia Talent Cup over the last few years has been the Talent Cup to watch in a lot of ways. You've also got the European Talent Cup, the Northern European Talent Cup as well. But when you look at the riders that have come through in the ATC over the years, Grand Prix winners and established Grand Prix riders have become the norm.
This is Azrian Deo, and I would suggest that he's one of the men to watch. He's a little bit further back down the grid. He starts from P10, but made a great start yesterday. He was up to 6th, actually, by the end of the opening lap, and starting a couple of positions further back down the order as well. He was battling for 6th position, then had a crash with Dilla Aditama. So Deo still chasing his first top 10 finish in the Asia Talent Cup, but he starts P10 here, and every reason to suspect that he might be able to pull that off.
Yeah, obviously that crash yesterday with Aditama, and it was unfortunate for him, but he was able to at least show some decent pace during the course of the practice sessions. We'll see what he can do during this race, so keep an eye on the number 19.
The other rider I would suggest that one ought to watch out for a little bit further down the order, Tetsuya Fujita from P15. He was 17th on the grid in race 1 and climbed up to finish in 9th, his best in the class, and he starts, as I've said, a couple of places higher up this time. This is Shiril, who had a really strong first round in Qatar with a 5th and an 8th position, 17 years of age from Malaysia. Only got back into the top 10 for the first time here yesterday with P7.
Yeah, also racing in Europe this year in the European Talent Cup, so getting in plenty of action, even though there's been a big gap in the Asia Talent Cup from the opening rounds in Qatar.
1.5 minutes then until the pit lane opens. The riders will be released. The fact that they're all queuing up in pit lane rather suggests that they won't need too much time from pit lane opening to get straight round towards the start line.
Yeah, they're pretty eager to get out there, get to the grid, grid and then do their sighting lap and then get straight into action. 12 laps for the ATC, so it is a bit of a sprint, down 4 laps from their original start, but you can see everyone now getting ready. A minute until pit lane opens. The mechanics just starting all those bikes now.
Is there an extent to which, if they had been able to go racing, they might have benefited from the experience, or are we asking too much of such young riders?
I think you're asking too much of some of the younger riders in the class. There's 12-year-old riders in this in their first year, some riders making their debut in the Asia Talent Cup. I think it's fine for the riders at the front of the field that have that bit of experience, but some of those riders a little bit further back at a brand new track like we have here in Mandalika as well, a track where we saw a lot of incidents yesterday. I think it's best to err on the side of caution.
Yes, fair range of ages, as you say, from Veda Pratama at 12 years of age upwards. Of course, there will be an age limit of 13 for any new riders from next season, and then for 2023, if I'm not mistaken, that goes up to 14 from then onwards. So they're trying to sort of narrow the range of ages, because Daniel Sharil at the other end of the scale, 18 years of age, also competing out there with a 12-year-old.
Yeah, and I think that's one of the big things that's going to change over the next few years. Obviously, with everything that's happened this year, really important to be able to make some of those changes, and that increase in the minimum age is going to be something that's going to make a big difference. Speaking to some of the riders that have come through into the Talent Cups over the last few years, the one thing that they've said is adapting to a bike of this size, tyres and wheels of this size, is actually one of the biggest challenges, moving from mini bikes onto these kind of bikes, and that's where it takes a little bit of time to get that experience. But certainly all these riders, we've seen it time and time again in the ATC over the years, they're all very competitive, very fast. There's a really good screening process now to get through these riders. I was actually in Malaysia a couple of years ago for the MotoGP race, went down to the karting track in Sepang where they did the tryouts for ATC, and it really is a case of getting the best of the best from each of the different regions. Obviously here in the Asia Talent Cup, you're taking in a pool of talent from Asia, the Middle East, and then also Australasia as well, so you get the Australians, New Zealand riders can get the opportunity to race here. We've seen Turkish riders like the Onchu brothers racing in this class in the past, and then obviously a whole host of Asian riders, whether it's the likes of Samkyat Chantra here from Indonesia, the likes of Kaito Toba, the first champion coming from Japan. This is the chance for these riders. It means that you're able to have affordable racing, show your talent, give yourself the chance of moving on to the bigger stage. That's been one of the big positives we've seen since 2014 with the start of the ATC.
Riders making their way round towards the start line then, a 12-lap race ahead of us. And if you're just joining us after a slight delay, we're building up to race 2 of round 3 in the 2021 Asia Talent Cup, and what could be a title decider. Taiyo Furusato on a maximum 125 points, and if he maintains that winning run for another race here this afternoon now, I was about to say this morning, but we've now crossed into afternoon with the delayed start, then Furusato will be crowned as the winner, because he will not be able to be caught. 51 points would be the very minimum that he would be ahead if he were to win this race. Only 50 points up for grabs after this race, with the third race of the weekend coming up this afternoon as we embark on round 4 on the same day that we finish round 3, and then the final race of the Asia Talent Cup season tomorrow. Yeah,
not confusing at all, and certainly for the ATC riders, they're not going to be confused when the lights go out in a couple of minutes' time. They're going to come to the grid now, and then they'll go out for their actual sighting lap to the start of the race. But what we saw in yesterday's running, and it's going to be interesting to see what happens now today, is on the run down in towards turn 1, we saw the number 15 of Furusato from the second row of the grid get pinched on the run into turn 1. That's easily can be the case as well, so riders do need to be careful in that run into turn 1. 90-degree right-hander.
Reminder of the grid then for race 2, and it's a slightly different order to what we had for race 1 yesterday. It was a demolition derby at the first time of asking around this Mandalika International Circuit, and 2 riders unfortunately withdrawn through injury. Kanta Hamada fractured left forearm, and Hakim Denish a crash from 5th position. He's out with a double fracture to his right wrist. So we're 2 riders down, but that does mean that several riders promoted to be a little bit closer to the front, and a couple of riders to watch further down the order. Azrian Deo starting from P10. He was very competitive right from the start, firing his way through in the early stages, and Tetsuya Fujita, who starts from P15, and he managed to work his way up from 17th to 9th at the first time of asking in race 1.
Yeah, even further down the field, when you look at the ATC, you can have riders that just have that one weekend where it really clicks into place. They're able to have good results. You look at the back of the grid, Nicholas on the number 12 machine, he might be starting 19th in this race. He is a top top 5 finish to his name in the Qatari rounds as well. So there is speed all the way through the field here in ATC.
And another example of exactly what you've just said, Ray Wakamatsu, who's had 2 4th place finishes in the 4 races that took place in Qatar at the start of this season, the Qatar Grand Prix and then the Doha Grand Prix immediately following it, the first 2 rounds of the 2021 Asia Talent Cup. And Ray Wakamatsu, one of the more experienced riders on this grid, despite being just 15 years of age, he's already had 16 starts in the Asia Talent Cup, but hasn't had a good weekend so far, only managing to come through for 11th. And remember, I mentioned that we had 7 retirements in race 1, so riders towards the back of the field did largely make progress if they stayed on their bikes.
Yeah, the big riders to keep an eye on, obviously Furusato on the number 15, he's the maximum man, he's won every race so far this season. Daniel Sharil on pole position on the 21, he's got 3 podiums in a row, and then Gunmaye on the number 5 machine, he's had 3 podiums through the course this season.
We'll do our very best to keep you abreast of the championship situation as we go through as well, because this could be the race in which it's all settled. Taiyo Furusato, 125 points, 46 up on Daniel Sharil, the rider who's finished second to him in each of the last 3 races, the 18-year-old from Malaysia, and Gunmaye, the 15-year-old from Japan, still chasing his first race victory in this class. He has had 3 podiums in the last 5. Dark clouds still looming overhead as the riders complete their warm-up lap. And if we do get wet weather, it will quickly become treacherous out there. Yeah,
whatever weather we've had so far today has come from the ocean backwards, so it is pushing with it some clearer skies. So hopefully for the 12-lap Asia Talent Cup race, we're able to get through and see some nice clean action on what's a mostly dry track at this stage.
Yes, we didn't order the weather until World Superbike Race 1, did we? So it's starting to come a little bit early. It doesn't normally happen when you order something. 12 laps coming up. A revised number of laps. Finally, we get underway with race 2 of round 3 of the 2021 Asia Talent Cup, the Indonesian round. For the second time of asking, we get underway. Fast start immediately from the number 21. The pole sitter Daniel Sharil has really made a break in the run down towards turn 1. They're practically 8 abreast further back in the pack. Furusato's made a good jump from the second row of the grid. That's Ferdhouse as well, up into P3, I think, as early as turn number 1. So a train of riders now from second position back. But the key story of the first bend, Furusato making immediate progress.
Yeah, Ferdhouse with a good start as well. Looks like Hongo's up there in the leading positions as well. Carter Thompson on the number 6 machine, converting his converting his front row start into a top 5 position as well. So everyone able to make it through those first couple of corners cleanly. We did see one rider running out wide through that opening corner, but everyone cleanly through.
Yes, so Herjan Ferdhouse, who came home in 10th place in race 1, his first appearance of this 2021 season, is now taking the fight to the championship leader. And Furusato is going to have at least one bike between himself and the man that he'll aim to beat if he is to take the title here today. Pulling away out in front, then it's Daniel Sharil from Ferdhouse in second position, the number 10. Then it's the number 15, the championship leader Furusato. Hongo, who completed the front row of the grid, Masaya Hongo, the 17-year-old from Japan, is directly behind them. A little bit of liberties being taken there on the outside of the circuit. Hongo just being picked off by Gunmaye, who recovers 4th position successfully. Furusato getting back on terms with Ferdhouse now, and Mie following him through. Hongo's been relegated down to 5th position, but the main loser of the opening lap has been Carter Thompson from P2 down to P7. A little bit of rubbing in the top 5 positions. They're only costing one another time at this stage.
Yeah, and certainly at the front of the field, Daniel Sharil has to take advantage of any scrapping that goes on behind him. He's been able to open up a pretty good lead on the opening lap. We'll see if the likes of Furusato is able to close down that 0.7 of a second.
Ferdhouse was the rider to lose out in that scrapping. And you can see them all still at it, but it's enabling the leaders to break away. Daniel Sharil, the fastest man first time around, 3/4 of a second he's gained over Furusato, running very, very wide. One of the riders there, I think Dilla from 5th position, has ended up dropping a couple of places there. Furusato then 3/4 of a second behind Sharil, the race leader. Another half a second back is Mie in 3rd place. Then it's Hongo on the number 17, the yellow helmet you can see there. The number 6 of Carter Thompson has now recovered at 5th place. So Ferdhouse relegated to 6th, and Aditama, Dilla, Shireel and Dandy rounding out your top 10.
Yeah, and Shireel at the front of the field. Daniel Shireel on that 21. He's opened up 0.8 of a second. On this lap, he's been able to stretch out another couple of tenths of a second. But we'll see if Furusato and Mie are able to close down that gap. You can see down in towards turn 10. That looked like it might have been Aditama trying to attack down into 10.
That was a big attack from Aditama as well. You could see the green helmet flashing through, running wide. Wakamatsu, who'd made good progress in the early stages from P16, was up to 11th. Run off the circuit altogether and may well drop back. The lead group at the moment is comprised of 12 riders, all covered by 2.5 seconds, although that may begin to fracture, will begin to fracture as the race goes on, little doubt about that. Furusato behind Shireel. As things stand, the championship fight would go into the third race of the weekend, would go into round 4 of the 2021 Asia Talent Cup that gets underway this afternoon. But Furusato is not done just yet, that's for sure.
Yeah, good riding there from Mie as well on that number 5 machine to just drop behind Furusato, not try and attack at this stage. See if Furusato is able to use his pace. He is the pole sitter for the remaining 2 races this weekend. He was fast in free practice yesterday. He is the fastest rider out here in Indonesia this weekend. You want to try and see if you're able to use him just to close that gap onto Shireel at the front of the field. They pulled back 1/10 of a second last time around.
Mie, the fastest man of that second lap, a 1 minute 44.118 according to our timing screens. So just 0.7 of a second now covering the lead trio. There's over a second, the gap back now to Masaya Hongo on the number 17. I think that Feardaus might have just got back in front of him, actually. The two of them scrapping in the early stages of lap 3. Carter Thompson trying to recover. So that's your breakaway, and it's a trio once again contesting the podium places.
Yeah, and certainly as it is right now, you'd expect these 3 to be able to maintain their pace and stay as a bit of a group, because Furusato and Mie are going to close up on Daniel Shireel already in the last couple of corners. We've seen them pull back another couple of tenths of a second. They are doing their best to get that gap down. It's down to 0.4 of a second.
Masaya Hongo coming through on the inside of Herjan Feardaus, and Hongo who crashed out pretty spectacularly actually at the final turn halfway through yesterday's race, his first retirement of the season, back up and running and inside the lead group once again. He was in the top 6 at the time of his crash yesterday. Certainly has been his best weekend so far. A 7th position in the visit to... Well, I think I might have cursed him because he's run off the circuit altogether there and been picked off by Feardaus, but that's one of those inevitable circumstances of a pack race, and he is still in the group from 4th position back. Very much 2 fights at the moment. But just going back to Masaya Hongo on the number 17, having a really strong weekend here, and has never finished in the top 6 before, so looking good to do so in race 2.
I'll tell you what, all the way around the outside, I think that was Fadilla. This is his debut weekend in the ATCs after picking off 2 riders on the run into turn 15 there. Looks like he was able to get through on the likes of Carter Thompson in front of him.
Recap Fadilla, who was 5th position in yesterday's race. It was a race of attrition, as we've been saying in the build-up, but on your debut to keep your nose clean when 7 riders around you are retiring is impressive. And there was a sort of secondary group, a quartet really, all fighting over that place, which was 5th in the end. It was slightly further back until a couple of incidents ahead of them, and that secondary group was covered by just 1.5 seconds at the checkered flag, and he was actually starting to ease away from them at the time of the completion of the race. So yeah, as you say, Recap Fadilla doing a great job for 5th position here yesterday on his debut. Now it's all closed back up at the front of the field, lap 4 of 12, so it is something of a sprint. We are heading towards a 3rd race distance. Daniel Shireel is defending against Taiyo Furusato. Furusato comes around the outside. I thought that Gunmir might blindside him, might catch him by surprise, but he was aware enough to be able to sweep through and hold on. Mie then in 2nd position, and that's the worst possible outcome for Daniel Shireel, who's relegated down to 3rd.
Yeah, Shireel goes from 1st to 3rd, and Furusato's done a good job to bridge that gap. We've also seen Mie with fast pace all the way through this weekend, and in yesterday's race he just gave up a little bit of ground in the final laps. Obviously a shorter race today, that might play to his strengths as well.
Yes, I should say that Gunmir is only 6 points back from Daniel Shireel in the championship standing, so he is among the riders who can deny Furusato at least taking the championship in this very race. The other, Carter Thompson, is all the way down in 8th position, so I think we're talking about 3 riders now as potential title contenders, and none more so than, of course, Furusato, who is the championship leader for a reason. He's won all of the races so far. Yesterday, once he hit the front on lap 3, he led every lap over the line from there on in. He's got a quarter of a second buffer now over Gunmie, and Daniel Sharil will be keen to take up the challenge at the front.
Yeah, I think yesterday was really impressive to see how cool ahead he kept on that final lap. He lost the lead with half a lap to go, was still able to make the move at the penultimate corner. And in this race, it looks like Furusato's trying to take advantage of that pace that's on, bridge a gap of almost a second to Daniel Sharil, and try and just get his head down and see if he can break away. We saw in yesterday's races, there were times whenever we thought that he might have been able to break away, wasn't quite able to do it. It's going to take a big ask from him to try and open up a gap. As it is, you'd expect to see the top 3 in the championship battling it out all the way through till the end of this race.
Yes, the Indonesian spectators may well be hoping for a little bit more fighting at the head of the field, because they've got a couple of their riders in that secondary group. You can see it in the background of the shot, and they all come through together. Feardouse in 4th position, all the way down to Sharil in 10th place, are covered by just a second. So very little to choose between them. I should emphasise that's Sharil I'm talking about down in 10th position, not to be confused with Daniel Sharil, who's that man at the back of this trio at the head of the field.
Yeah, I usually find it confusing enough in the ATC, but at the front of the field, not too confusing for Furusato. He's doing exactly what he did in yesterday's race. Keep himself at the front of the group and let everyone else try and attack you. We saw in yesterday's races, he had no problem taking big looks over his shoulder, just understanding who was in the group, what he had to do. When he needed to get his head down, he got his head down.
And Mie in the early stages was able to take the fight to him, was able to fight his way through down the inside at one stage. First incident of the race. We did say that yesterday was pretty action-packed, and it looks as though race 2 is going to follow that trend. First rider down in the gravel trap, and we're going to see exactly what happens. It's the number 25. That's Pratama, Veda Pratama, who has gone down, just chasing. It looked like he was pushing as hard as he can. He's a relative newcomer. He's the youngster that we were talking about earlier on, just 12 years of age. Finished 8th position in race 1 yesterday. He chased perhaps slightly offline, through on the inside, and was the odd one out of that trio. Yeah,
we saw that he was battling it out, just trying to move himself up close enough to the points-paying positions. As it is, it's Tom Drain in 15th in the final points-paying position here.
Back with the leaders then. Furusato out in front, just 0.2 of a second now covering the top 3. They've gradually bunched up. Who's going to be the first to have a go at Furusato? He's having things all his own way at the moment. That might not be the case for much longer. Mie's got a really good run as they come through the 7-8-9 complex and now in towards turn 10. Yesterday's action hotspot, but he wasn't close enough.
Yeah, how impressive is that from Furusato on the brakes there? We saw that Mie had gotten alongside him, but for Furusato, he made sure he was braking that little bit deeper, sweeps across the front of Mie's bike and holds on to that race lead. That's what we saw in yesterday's race as well from Furusato. We know turn 10 is probably the best overtaking opportunity in the ATC. That's where a lot of moves were made yesterday. It's also where we saw a lot of incidents and a bit of carnage.
Yes, and if Mie can't get through there, then it looks as though he's keen to get through elsewhere in towards turn 16, although we know that Furusato is good against defending against those moves in towards turn 16, don't we, from the last lap of race 1. Sharil looks like he's biding his time at this stage. We head towards half race distance.
Yeah, Sharil there at the back of the group on the 21 machine. We'll see if he's able to try and attack into turn 1, but as it is right now, Mie doing exactly what he did in yesterday's race, but it was around this time that we started to see him fade a little bit, and Sharil and Furusato really just start to open up a little bit of a gap.
Lap 7, last time around, all 3 of these leaders set 1 minute 44.7s, a quarter of a second covering them as they cross the line. It's a 4.5 second gap now to Feardouse, Herjan Feardouse on the number 10, who sits in 4th position with the entire pack behind him, still 1.5 seconds covering 4th all the way down to 10th, and then a separate group from 11th position down. But we're quite rightly watching the lead trio, and this is Taiyo Furusato, who might have started in 5th position but has spent the majority of this race in P1, right where he sits at the moment, under some pressure once again from Gunmie. We'll see if he can come through this 7-8-9 complex where they're making it through now in towards turn 10, and if he jams it down the inside like he did a lap ago, and whether Furusato has got the answer again on the outside. It's Sharil this time trying to make the move. Mie comes in late. Oh, goodness me, with a bit of a wobble there as well. Almost collected the back of Furusato. That could have changed the championship complexion very quickly, couldn't it?
Yeah, Furusada's brave to hold that outside line and sweep all the way across and hold on to that position. You can see in the second group, it is still Hongo leading the way, and then the number 10 of Firdaus. We've seen that Carter Thompson managed to get into the top 5 on this lap, but Hergen's got through on him again. That's one rider running off. It could be Aditama that's gone down there in the number 3 machine.
That was a big incident out the back of the shot, and Aditama running straight on in towards the gravel trap, and that is a real shame for Dilla Aditama, the number 3, and that is going to be a 5th retirement out of 6 races in this 2021 campaign. I said on the grid that he'd been a little bit action and prone at times, and so it's proven in this race too.
Yeah, no luck yesterday in an incident at turn 10, and then this incident at turn 13, and high speed crash for him, but good to see him back on his feet and just trying to get that belly pan cleaned out. We'll see if he tries to get back into the race. We did see that riders that crashed in yesterday's race were still able to remount and score some points. We'll see if he can do that, but like you said, Alex, he's at 4 retirements already this season, and then another crash in this race.
Well, we didn't get 15 finishers yesterday. We had 7 riders retiring from a 21 rider grid, so all 14 that finished scored, and that you can see why he's collected another rider before going straight on.
I think it might have been Dandy that he collected there on the number 11 machine, and just left with nowhere to go. A bit similar to what happened to him in yesterday's race as well.
Lap 8 of 12 then, and Sharil has left Mia just as we saw yesterday and is going with Furusato, and they're absolutely nose to tail. They're making their way in towards turn 10 with 4.5 laps to go, and Furusato still got the speed in that braking zone in towards turn 10.
We saw in yesterday's race though that Daniel Sharil was willing to make a pretty daring move through the next couple of corners. Down in towards turn 12 is where he made the move. It's a fast left-hander. He stuffed it down the inside in yesterday's race, so we know that if he gets a half a chance, he's going to try and attack on Furusada. Still a lot of this race to go though. 4 laps to go when they come across the line.
It's very aggressive into turn 12 here. Yesterday was Daniel Sharil to take up the lead, but it only lasted just under a sector before back through around the outside came Furusato through turns 15 and 16 to take the win. Furusato still leads. Sharil going a little bit wide there, and Gunmia coming back through for second position.
Yeah, the one thing that Furusato wants is he wants Gunmia in this group, because as it is, if he finishes second behind Gunmia, he would still win the championship and get it all wrapped up today. And certainly for Furusato, that has to be the target that he's got in his mind, just to make sure he's able to win the Asia Talent Cup this year.
0.3 of a second as they cross the line at the end of lap 8. Separate battle behind. It is still Hergen Firdaus who has led that group for several of the laps around. Hongo oscillating backwards and forwards. He's dropped down to 6th position. That clash with Dandy and Aditama that we saw previously has broken that secondary group in 2. There was only 1.5 seconds covering 4th to 10th. It's now a very different scenario. 2.5 seconds just between 6th and 7th. So it's 3 riders contesting the podium places. It's 3 riders contesting 4th position. Carter Thompson actually just getting back through now on Firdaus for P4. Running wide coming off turn 6 was Daniel Sharil. That's left him with a little bit of a margin to find on Gunmie, but Mie gets down the inside of Furusato, moves across his path in towards turn 10, and if that's what it takes to get it done, says Gunmie, then that's exactly what I'll do. Furusato with a good look over his shoulder, knows that Sharil is directly behind him, but with Furusato out in front, if he were to stay there, it still wouldn't be enough with Gunmia out in front, it still wouldn't be enough to take the title down to another race, because Daniel Sharil is directly behind as well.
Yeah, and you can see here with the championship leader Furusato, we'll see if he's able to try and be aggressive on the run down in towards the last corner to see if he can try and make a move back into the race lead.
Yes, I got my words in a twist there. This is the live championship, and that'll explain it possibly better than I just did. Basically, I was saying that Furusato, if he finishes second behind Mie, who's also in contention, a similar number of points to Daniel Sharil, then we would still go into the third race of the weekend here this afternoon. 3 laps to go then. Furusato out in front, 3/10 covering your lead trio, as it has been for the majority of this race, to be perfectly honest. Furusato back in front, and Daniel Sharil, his closest points rival, stuck down in third. Gunmie's been the more pugnacious of the two over the last lap or so.
I was getting a bit confused with my championship standings as well, so certainly for Furusato, the easy target is win the race, win the championship, and he's doing exactly that once again. He's opened up another couple of tenths of a second, but we've seen in this sector of the track, this is where the number 5 of Gunmia is very fast and able to bridge that gap. But we also know Daniel Sharil in yesterday's race had that edge in the closing stages. He needs to get through into second spot to see if he's able to take the fight to Furusato.
Furusato is your leader. Mie then in second position. We've seen most of the moves in the Asia Talent Cup this weekend, and also most of the crashes in towards turn number 10. They're 3 abreast this time around. Furusato on the 15 on the outside. Mie is getting moved out of the way now by Daniel Sharil, who comes through for seconds.
Yeah, Sharil did a good job there to hold on to second spot. We saw that bike moving around a lot in the entry into turn 10. As you said, Alex, that's where we saw a lot of incidents in yesterday's race. So it is a place where you can make overtaking moves. It's also a place where it can all go badly wrong.
2 laps and 1 sector to go now. We're on lap 10 of 12. A reduced length to this race after a delay due to weather conditions before we could get underway. Race 2. Furusato in front. Daniel Sharil keen to get through. This is where Furusato got round him yesterday for the race victory. Sharil's going to get a little bit offline here, and Gunmiya is going to slam it down the inside in towards 15 and 16 and recovers second place. And Furusato again is able to defend that lead.
Second time we've seen Gunmiya do that on Sharil as well. So we can clearly see Sharil is struggling into turn 15 to get that bike stopped. But maybe just a little bit of tactics from Sharil as well. Be interesting to see if he changes tack in the final couple of laps.
2 to go. Furusato has a 0.3 of a second advantage over Mie and Sharil. These two have got to be careful that they don't fight with one another. We know that Furusato, as he did yesterday, has got a last couple of laps sprint in him.
Yeah, we saw in yesterday's race he tried on the second last lap, the penultimate lap, to open a gap and then leave it with a comfortable gap on that final lap. Wasn't able to do it. Now the key thing for him is this opening couple of sectors. Is he able to open up enough of a gap? We know that the run through 6, 7, 8 and 9, that's where you can use the slipstream and close right up. Sharil's close enough to be able to use some of that toe in the run down in towards turn 10.
Championship situation is fairly straightforward with the 2 riders behind him. If either of them gets through on Furusato, the championship will go another race. But if Furusato stays out in front and takes what will be a 6th consecutive victory of this 2021 campaign, then he will have sewn up the Asia Talent Cup with 2 races to spare, and that's the way it looks at the moment. Furusato has been almost untroubled at the head of the field. Yeah,
he's done a really good job in this race to keep the cool head. We saw the same in yesterday's race, but Sharil is right there with him. Gunmiya has now lost a few tenths of a second. He's 0.4 of a second behind Sharil, so suddenly it's left to the top 2 in the championship for most of this season, now battling it out in the final lap and a half.
It is a near repeat of race 1 yesterday, when on the final 2 laps Gunmiya, the number 5, got dropped back from the lead duo. These are the top 3 in the championship, and they currently sit in the order that they are in the classification as well. Furusato, who leads it by 46 points over Daniel Sharil. Gunmiya 52 points down on Furusato, so would need to beat him to keep his personal hopes alive. And at the moment it's all about Furusato heading his way towards victory. 1 to go.
Yeah, really important for Furusato just to think about where he can defend on the run in towards turn 10. He has been stronger everywhere else around this track all the way through this weekend. He's going to force Sharil to go around the outside into turn 1.
Daniel Sharil, who was more than 0.3 of a second faster than Furusato, the race leader, last time around, gets around the outside into turn 1, and Furusato eases him out, and then there's a bit of a moment for Daniel Sharil coming through the first turn. He's going to have to work harder than he ever has if he wants to beat Furusato, the man of the moment.
Yeah, super riding from Furusato. Forced Sharil to go the long way around the outside down the start-finish straight in the run into turn 1. He's going to have to try and do something similar on the run into turn 10 as well. That's Sharil's best chance to make the move.
We saw Sharil was willing to make the move wherever he could. Yes, no, big moment there for Gunmiya, and he's gone out onto those big serrated curbs on the outside line as well. So that rules him out of a fight between these top 2 because there's 0.6 of a second already between second and third positions, and Gunmiya's got it all wrong there on the final lap. He holds on for a podium position. Sharil to the outside line then as they come in towards turn number 10. Tries to go the long way round. He'll now switch it back. It gives him the inside line for turn 11. Daniel Sharil has thought about this in advance, but he's not quite alongside. Furusato defends the position through turn 12, where Daniel Sharil passed Furusato here yesterday. These two have swapped and changed. There were 8 thousandths of a second across the last timing point between the 2 of them. Sharil gets nerfed to the inside. He takes that as his opportunity, as his call to arms into turn 13 and comes through. Then Furusato recovers it coming through turn 14. It's a head-to-head on the final lap that will determine whether we go to another race in the Asia Talent Cup for 2021 or whether we have just settled the series standings. 1 final sector to go. It's Furusato, the leader, on the number 15. It's Daniel Sharil, the pretender, on the number 21. I don't think he's going to be close enough coming off the final turn. It's a drag race down to the line. Furusato holds on, and Taiyo Furusato claims the 2021 Asia Talent Cup with 2 races to spare.
I actually thought Furusato might have gone too defensive there in the final sector. Judged it to perfection. Really good race performance from him. Hongo takes 4th. Thompson's up inside the top 5 once again as the rest of the field comes through to claim the points-paying positions.
Yes, Thompson rounding out your top 5. Feardaus, Fujita, an isolated 7th position. Wakamatsu in 8th for Dilla, and Dandy rounding out your top 10. But it was all about the top 2 in the context of the championship. We had a very similar race to what we had yesterday. We had exactly the same outcome. A 6th win of the season for Tetsuya Fujita.
Yeah, and if you want to see how on the limit Shireel was to try and make the moves to take the race lead, we saw through turns 6 and 7 he had a bit of a moment. We saw on the run into turns 12 and 13 he had another moment. That was the deciding factor. It meant that into turn 15 Fujita was able to take a normal line. He didn't have to defend the position. He did take a defensive line on the run through 15 into 16, and he was able then to exit the corner nice and clean and hold on to that race victory. He was able to take it by a 1/10 of a second, and just like we saw yesterday, able to lead pretty much the whole race here, nice and comfortable. 6 from 6 from Fujita.
And you get the impression that Daniel Shireel just felt that he had to throw everything at Fujita if he was going to have a hope of beating him and pushing this championship fight on. I think realistically, even if Daniel Shireel had got through to hit the front, Fujita would have been a matter of a few points away from claiming the title, and more than likely would have done it this afternoon anyway. But Fujita, 150 points out of a possible 150, still 50 up for grabs over the course of this afternoon and tomorrow. But Daniel Shireel is now 51 points behind Gunmie, 61 points behind Fujita, 10 therefore behind Shireel, and 19 clear of Carter Thompson. Damage limitation ride in the end for Thompson. We just watched the timing screen because we've had a penalty for exceeding track limits on the final lap, and it's for Wakamatsu. So it's not for Fujita. That's the most important thing at this precise moment, because of course if Fujita had exceeded track limits and had to drop a position, then the championship fight would go on for another race.
Yeah, and certainly for Fujita, didn't put a foot wrong all the way through that race, hasn't put a foot wrong all season, and that's why he's been so impressive and able to take this championship. 6 from 6, very impressive start to his international career as well. Obviously he's going to be in the Moto3 World Championship next year with the Asia Talent Team, and we've seen some good riders come through in the Talent Team over the years. Obviously Ayagura, their big star in recent years in the Moto3 class, done a really good job in Moto2, but Fujita certainly a name to keep your eye on.
Yeah, it's always an opportunity for the Asia Talent Cup when they're rubbing shoulders with the Grand Prix and with the World Superbike paddocks. And Fujita is a name that we'll remember for the future, little doubt about that. 16 years of age from Japan, and he's taken the Asia Talent Cup, and in the best possible fashion as well, with 6 wins out of 6 so far. Brilliant performance. Really
impressive, and it's how cool a head he keeps as well. We saw in yesterday's race, we saw in today's race as well, the same story. Very impressive young rider, and we also saw that blinding pace from the start of the season in Qatar, where he was able to win both races by over 9 seconds.
4 second places in a row for Daniel Shireel. He's going to be getting fed up with this. It's all 4 of them that have been less than a third of a second between himself and Fujita, and he's got 2 more opportunities to at least try and take that first victory since his comeback.
Yeah, it has been a really impressive comeback. We talked about it after race 1 when he had a fractured leg in Sepang a few years ago, almost had to have his leg amputated, so it shows just how impressive a job he's done to recover from that, the 18-year-old, and able to take his 4th consecutive second place finish, and certainly you'd like to see him end the season with a race victory, but Fujita's performances, they don't tend to leave the door open for too much.
No, but Shireel's story is only missing that one final chapter, isn't it? Last a winner in 2018. Of course, he had that severe injury to his leg in 2018, and has been on the road to recovery since, and only got back on a bike in August of last year. Really incredible just for him to be challenging for, well, it's incredible that he's walking, frankly, but it's incredible that he's challenging for podium positions in the Asia Talent Cup as well. He takes 2nd position here today with Gunmie rounding out your podium trio, pushing hard. Anyone who wants to stay with Fujita has to push hard in the closing stages, that's for sure. And again, on the penultimate lap, Gunmie just losing a little bit of ground, and then on the final lap itself, going across the curbs, we're getting an indication of just how high those curbs are, and if you catch them in the wrong position, they're really awkward for bikes, that's for sure. And Gunmie getting all out of shape, eventually finishes 2 seconds behind, but again, he played his part in the entertainment in race 2.
Yeah, trying to go with those leaders to be able to give himself a chance, and you have to push hard to be able to go with the likes of Fujita and Daniel Shireel in the course of this season, and certainly for Gunmie with his 4th podium of the season, he's certainly made people stand up and take notice of him.
Unbeaten from 6 races out of 6 in the 2021 Asia Talent Cup, your champion, Tetsuya Fujita.
Tayo, many congratulations because you are the 2021 Idemitsu Asia Talent Cup champion. Tell us how happy you are.
Of course, I'm happy, super happy because I cannot say a lot because until today, all races I won the race, so it's most important for me because
Suppose that it's a dream come true. So many congratulations, Tayo.
Thank you.
So for Osato, the one thing missing from his armoury, I think, is the experience of the interviews. Fine performance in 2021.
So the newly crowned champion, and don't think it's really sunk in for him just yet, but a fantastic season. 6 races, 6 wins, and whatever happens later on today and tomorrow, he cannot be beaten. He is the champion of the
Tayo Furusato is your 2021 Asia Talent Cup winner. Is the name on everyone's lips then after that race, and I suspect that he might be a name to watch for the future as well.
Yeah, he's certainly going to be a rider that people are going to pay attention to in the Moto 3 paddock next year. Obviously, he's also raced in the Red Bull Rookies Cup this year, won on his debut in Mugello. He was very fast in another couple of races, Sachsenring in particular, so he is certainly a rider to keep an eye on for next year.
Confirmation of your race results. Tayo Furusato takes a 6th win out of 6 to extend his championship lead to 51 points with only 50 remaining. Daniel Sharil doing his level best to keep his championship hopes alive. A 4th consecutive 2nd place for him, and all of them have been less than a second to the race winner. Gun Mie with another 3rd position. It's the same podium trio as we had in race 1 here yesterday, and it was a very similar race the way it panned out, the way it played out, and it does mean that each of those 3 riders extend the gaps between them, and directly behind them to Carter Thompson, who got relegated into the secondary group and had to work hard just to come home for 5th.
thirsty work racing around this circuit. Congratulations, guys, as they now make their way into the backstage. A couple of them grabbing a drink, just congratulating each other as we can.
And the championship standings upon the completion of round number 3. Still 1 round to go that starts as early as this afternoon. No change in the top 7 positions, as you can see. Hakim Denish and Kanta Hamada both missing from the remainder of this 2021 season through injury, so they're likely to slip back. Sharil Sharil is in pride of place with an opportunity to pass the pair of them. The top 4 look fairly settled, although we could still have a battle for second in the standings, with Gunmie and Daniel Sharil only separated by 10 points.
So we are now ready then for the podium presentations. Ladies and gentlemen.
So it's time to greet our podium trio for race 2 of round 3 in the 2021 Idemitsu Asia Talent Cup. It is the Indonesian round. And first up, for 3rd position, Gun Mie, the 15-year-old from Japan. That was his 8th race start in the Asia Talent Cup, and his 4th podium appearance, still yet to better that 2nd position that he managed in the season opener of 2021 in Qatar. 2nd place going the way of Daniel Sharil. He's going to have 2nd place trophies coming out of his ears the way things are going in 2021. It is a 9th podium finish for him. Yet another performance from him up in those top 3 positions. Remember, he's one of the most experienced men in this paddock. That's his 18th race start in the Asia Talent Cup. Still waiting to add, though, to that win tally. But your race winner, little doubt as to who it might be before we got underway, but he was again made to work for it. If anything, Tayo Furusato is probably pulling on the level of the other riders around him.
Yeah, certainly has done a great job all the way through this season. And when you look at what we saw from Pedro Acosta in the Moto 3 World Championship coming through from the Red Bull Rookies Cup and from CEV Moto 3, there is that level that you can reach from these Talent Cup races. And certainly for Furusato, he's going to be a rider that everyone's going to be quite keen to see how he gets on from the Qatari Grand Prix onwards next year.
Race winners trophy presented to Tayo Furusato, who is also the champion in the 2021 Idemitsu Asia Talent Cup.
To the national anthem of the winning rider, the national anthem of Japan.
Congratulations then to our top three. If I could ask you to stay on the podium, gentlemen.
Your podium trio then for race 2 of the Indonesian round 3 of the 2021 Idemitsu Asia Talent Cup. Third position going the way of Gunmie of Japan. Second to Daniel Sharil of Malaysia. But your race winner, and therefore your champion in the Asia Talent Cup for 2021, is Taiyo Furusato.
Thank you very much indeed. And if I can now ask Mr. Yasuda to leave the podium and to the top 3 riders, just a couple more photos, please. Make some noise for our podium finishers in race.
Well, the Asia Talent Cup returns this afternoon with round 4 from the Mandalika International Circuit, getting underway at 4:30 p.m. Goodbye for now.
This side, and some on this side. No. Make the gap. Make the gap.
Bisa 제어대로 다운로드 토코피디아 스카랑.
Of course, unbeaten in 2021. He leads the championship. He's also been a Rookies Cup regular this season. He won on his debut in Mugello and finished 11th overall.
Yeah, he was really impressive in Saxon Ring as well and another couple of races. That's why we're going to see him in the World Championship next year.
Third row of the grid here is for Dilla Aditama, the first of the Indonesian riders on the grid. He's been a regular top 10 runner in his rookie campaign. He's also retired from 3 of the 4 races, so only 8 points on the board to date.
Yeah, it is his first season in Asian Talent Cup action, but the home crowd certainly have a leading rider to cheer on in this race.
Yes, one of the best rising talents from Indonesia at present. He's been rewarded with a place in the Rookies Cup for the 2022 season, so he's already planning his next step on the road to MotoGP. Alongside him on the third row of the grid will be Hakum Denish and also Raykat Fadilla. Further back down the order, the likes of Herjan Firdaus and also Sharil Sharil and Azran Deo, who complete the fourth row. Also